Hey, dear member family, today we're diving into a heartwarming, romantic tale that'll tug at your heartstrings. So let's get cozy and start this journey together. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch every meaningful story we share. And please leave a comment with Army to honor the brave soldiers from your country who inspire stories like this. A crisp autumn morning in Redfield, Vermont, sparkled like crystal, the scent of buttery cookies from hazelnut and honey drifting down Maple Street. Hazel Morgan, 34, stood behind the old wooden counter, her checkered apron dusted with flour, humming along to Fleetwood Mac's Landslide, crackling from a faded radio. That radio, her mom once called it, a storytelling music box, sat faithfully beside a wooden sign etched with "Bake with Love," a relic from the 80s when her mom baked for the whole town. Hazel eyed a tray of star-shaped cookies fresh from the oven, sighing. "How'd Mom make it look so easy?" she muttered, picking up a lopsided star, chuckling. "Guess at this week's fair, I'll sell satellite cookies." She hung an old photo on the shop's wall, her family back then. Mom beaming, Dad Billy stern in his Navy uniform, and tiny Hazel clutching a cookie as big as her face. The image warmed her, though a pang of sadness crept in. Mom was gone, and Dad now just sat on the porch with his vinyl records, never talking about the war or anything deep. The door's bell jingled, snapping Hazel back. No customer, just the wind. But then she saw him, the small shadow that appeared every afternoon. A boy stood outside the glass door, worn backpack slung over his shoulder, eyes lighting up at the tray of bear-shaped cookies. Max, she guessed, having heard an old lady in town call him that last week. About 7, with messy brown hair, he gazed at the cookies like they were the whole world. Hazel smiled, grabbing a paper bag and slipping in 3 bear cookies, dusting them with shimmering powdered sugar. She scribbled on a scrap of paper, "For the boy who loves bears." Tiptoeing outside, she left the bag on the step, then busied herself wiping the counter. Through the corner of her eye, she saw Max snatch the bag, hugging it like treasure, before darting down the street. The next day, Hazel found a folded drawing slipped under the door. A giant bear beside a tree, a sun overhead. In childish scrawl at the bottom, "Bear plus tree equals home." Hazel laughed, pinning it to the wooden board next to the family photo. "This kid," she murmured, "sure knows how to make my day." She didn't know much about Max, just rumors he lived with his dad, a quiet man new to Redfield. But each time she saw him, Hazel wanted to bake more, as if these small kindnesses kept her shop and herself aglow. She turned back to the star cookies, promising herself, "Tomorrow I'll make better bear cookies. For Max, maybe for all of Redfield." Outside, Maple Street stayed serene, as if waiting for a new story to unfold. Late afternoon at Hazelnut and Honey, golden sunlight poured through the windows, bathing the wooden counter in warmth. Hazel Morgan wiped flour from her checkered apron, humming to Fleetwood Mac's "Go Your Own Way," crackling from the old radio. She'd just arranged a tray of bear-shaped cookies, thinking of Max and his "bear plus tree equals home" drawing pinned to the wooden board. "Will the kids show today?" she wondered, then knocked over a salt jar. "Hazel, you're a disaster," she muttered, bending to clean it up. The door's bell jingled, startling Hazel. She shot up, nearly banging her head on the counter. A man walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a worn military jacket, short brown hair, and deep blue eyes that seemed to hold a dozen untold stories. He stood there scanning the shop, then locked eyes with Hazel. His voice was low, slightly rough. "You're the one giving my son cookies for 3 weeks?" Hazel blinked, her brain spinning like the oven. "Your son, Max?" She flailed her hands, forcing a smile. "I just thought he liked bears. No big deal." She stepped forward, tripping over a chair, sending a sugar jar rolling across the counter. Her face burned red as a ripe apple. The man, Max's dad, no doubt, picked up the jar, setting it neatly back. His lips twitched, a small smile, but enough to make Hazel forget her next words. "I'm Luke Bennett," he said, "and Max says your bear cookies beat pizza. Trust me, for a 7-year-old, that's high praise." Hazel laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Is that so? I'll add it to my trophy list. She stole a glance at Luke, noticing the old watch on his wrist. Round face, worn leather strap, just like the one her dad Billy wore in the photo on the wall. Nice watch, she blurted. Family heirloom? Luke stiffened briefly, fingers brushing the watch like touching a memory. From someone important, he said, voice dropping. Hazel nodded, not pressing, but she saw something distant in his eyes, like Maple Street at dusk. Let me get you coffee, she said quickly, pointing to the old pot in the corner. On the house. Call it. Thanks to Max for being a Bear Cookie fan. Luke hesitated, then sat at the counter, turning the black coffee mug in his hands. He watched Hazel stack cookies, his gaze softening, as if this bakery, with its buttery scent and radio hum, was the first place he'd felt at ease in months. You make this place feel alive, Luke said, sincere. Hazel blushed, nearly dropping the cookie tray. Just cookies, she replied, but her heart beat faster, sensing Redfield had just brought something new. A month passed, and hazelnut and honey became a regular stop for Luke Bennett and his son Max. Every Saturday, as autumn sunlight glimmered on Maple Street, Hazel opened the shop early, prepping a tray of bear-shaped cookies just to see Max burst in, old backpack swinging, grinning wide. Bear Lady, he called, a nickname that made Hazel giggle like wind chimes. Luke followed, worn military jacket frayed at the shoulders, hands in pockets, but his eyes now held less distance, as if the shop's buttery scent and old radio eased some heavy corners of his heart. That day, Hazel hosted a small baking party for Max. She handed him a tiny apron, laughing when he tackled the flour like a wrestler. Making bears or a volcano, she teased, flour in her hair. Max, dead serious. Bears need big ears, Bear Lady. Luke sat at the counter, black coffee steaming, watching them goof around. Hazel caught his gaze, gentle but tinged with sadness. She smeared flour on Max's nose to hide her racing pulse. She popped in an old cassette, James Taylor's Fire and Rain, filling the air, soft as Maple Street at dusk. Luke hummed along, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. Hazel raised an eyebrow, teasing, You sing? Thought you only growled. Luke grinned, a real smile that brightened the bakery. Heard it in the barracks, he said, then paused like a memory yanked him back. Hazel didn't push, just slid a plate of cookies his way. For you, 'cause Max says you're a superhero. Luke picked up a star-shaped cookie, fingers grazing the old watch on his wrist. Superheroes don't need pulling from rubble, he said quietly, eyes distant. Hazel sensed he'd cracked open a door, then shut it fast. She switched gears, talking about her dad, Billy Morgan. He loves vinyl, sits on the porch all day. War stories? Never. Once I asked, he just said, Hazel, baking's better than talking. Luke nodded, like he got something she left unsaid. Outside, Marion, the town's notorious matchmaker, passed by, coffee bag in hand. She paused, eyeing Hazel and Luke's banter, then whispered to her friend, If those two don't end up together, I'm retiring. Hazel caught a snippet, face flaming, dropping a wooden spoon. Max jumped in, flour on his cheeks. Bear Lady, Dad's awful at baking. Teach him. Luke faked a scowl. Hey, kid, I made sandwiches. Hazel laughed. Sandwiches don't count, Bennett. Before leaving, Hazel packed Max a bag of bear cookies, sneaking a star one for Luke. So you stop growling, she winked. Luke took it, holding her gaze longer than usual. You make this place feel like home, he said, earnest. Hazel smiled, but as the shop door closed, she stood alone, touching the family photo on the wall, wondering if Redfield and Luke were baking something bigger than cookies. A late autumn morning in Redfield chilled the air, golden leaves drifting sparsely down Maple Street. Hazel Morgan stood outside Hazelnut and Honey, clutching a box of star-shaped cookies, nervous as her first fare. Today was the Veterans Tribute at the town's small museum, where her dad, Billy Morgan, was honored on the honor wall. She'd invited Luke Bennett and Max, partly to share family pride, partly because she liked them near. Just cookies and friends, she told herself. But her heart raced when Luke and Max approached. Max bouncing with his worn backpack, Luke in his frayed military jacket. The museum sat at the street's end, a modest red brick building draped with American flags and faded black and white photos. Inside, old wood mingled with soft piano notes. America the Beautiful humming from speakers. Hazel led the father and son through the crowd, pointing to a wall etched with veterans' names. There, she grinned, voice proud. Billy Boomer Morgan, my dad. He never brags, but the whole town knows he's a hero. Luke nodded, eyes scanning the wall. Then he froze, as if time yanked him back. On a shelf by Billy's name was an old photo. A young man in Navy uniform, eyes bright, wearing a round-faced, leather-strapped watch, identical to the one on Luke's wrist. Boomer, he muttered, voice trembling. No way. Hazel turned, surprised. You know my dad? She asked, but Luke didn't answer right away. His gaze locked on the photo, hand unconsciously touching his watch, like brushing a buried memory. Max tugged Hazel's hand, innocent. Bear lady, what's wrong with Dad? Does he like the picture? Hazel forced a smile, heart churning. She glanced at Luke, watching him breathe deeply, wrestling with himself. Suddenly, Luke turned, striding toward the door. I need air, he said, voice rough. Hazel hesitated, then ran after, leaving Max with a town grandma. Outside the museum, cold wind swirled golden leaves. Luke, what's going on? She called, voice shaky. Talk to me. He stopped, back to her. He's why I'm alive, he whispered, words heavy as stone. Hazel stepped closer, gently touching his shoulder. What do you mean? She asked, eyes stinging. Luke turned, his deep blue eyes now red-rimmed. He raised his wrist, pointing to the watch. This was your dad's. He gave it to me, after pulling me from a place I didn't think I'd survive. Hazel stood stunned, recalling the photo in her bakery. Billy with that same watch. That watch, it's Dad's, isn't it? She asked, voice catching. Luke nodded, silent. A quiet settled, broken only by rustling leaves. Max ran out, hugging Hazel's leg, shattering the stillness. Bear lady, make Dad stop being sad, he said, holding a cookie she'd given earlier. Hazel looked at Luke, then Max, feeling Redfield had just unveiled a secret bigger than the town itself. She took Max's hand, saying softly, I'll find a way to make your dad smile. But inside, she knew everything had shifted, not just for Luke, but for her too. After the veterans' tribute, hazelnut and honey glowed late into the evening. Hazel Morgan stood behind the counter, wiping stray flour, her mind lingering on the museum courtyard where Luke Bennett stunned her. He's why I'm alive. The old radio sat silent, only autumn wind whistling through the door's crack. Max had been whisked home by Marion, Redfield's matchmaking grandma, leaving Hazel and Luke in the shop, facing each other across a tray of bear cookies and an unfinished story. Hazel slid a mug of black coffee toward Luke, who sat quietly, turning the old watch on his wrist. You don't have to say anything, she started, voice soft. But I want to understand. Luke looked up, his deep blue eyes gentler now, as if ready to unlock a long-sealed door. You don't give up, do you? He said, a sad smile tugging his lips. He took a breath, then spoke. 15 years ago in Iraq, Luke was a young Marine, trapped in an ambush. Smoke, fire, gunfire. He thought it was his last day. I was badly hurt, no hope left, he said, voice rough. Then Boomer, your dad, showed up. He dragged me from the rubble, bullets flying. He got hit saving me, Hazel. After that, he left the service. Luke pointed to the watch. He gave me this before he went, said, keep living, kid. I looked for him everywhere, but he was gone. Hazel listened, clutching her checkered apron. She pulled the family photo from the shop's wall, young Billy in Navy uniform wearing that same watch. Dad never told me, she whispered, eyes stinging. He just said war wasn't worth remembering. She looked at Luke, his head bowed, carrying the weight of years. You survived because of my dad, she said, voice catching. And now you're here with Max. That's what he'd want, right? Luke nodded, touching the photo. Men like him don't need to talk, he said. They live by giving. Hazel smiled through tears, feeling Redfield tie an invisible thread between her, Luke, and her dad. The shop felt strangely warm, as if the cookie scent wrapped them both. The door's bell jingled. Max burst in, jacket askew, clutching a star cookie from Marion. "Bear lady," he cheered, hopping onto a stool. "Mr. Morgan's a superhero, right? Like in movies." Hazel laughed, wiping her eyes. "Yeah, but he liked baking more than fighting." Max tilted his head, eyeing Luke. "Dad's a superhero too, 'cause he's got Mr. Morgan's watch." Luke hugged Max, eyes brighter. "Maybe I'm just the watch keeper," he said, glancing at Hazel. She blushed, turning to stack cookies, heart racing. As Max yawned, Luke stood, thanking Hazel with a long look. "You make things feel lighter," he said, sincere. Hazel slipped a bag of bear cookies to Max, teasing, "So your dad stops growling." The shop door closed. Hazel stood alone, touching the family photo. She smiled, thinking of Billy, Luke, and Max. Redfield, with its cookies and old secrets, was baking something bigger than a story. Days after the talk at Hazelnut and Honey, Hazel Morgan stood in her kitchen, the smell of roast chicken and mashed potatoes filling the small house at the end of Maple Street. She'd invited Luke Bennett and Max for dinner, but what made her jittery was her dad, Billy Morgan, meeting Luke, the man he'd saved 15 years ago. Hazel wore a simple green sweater, hair tied high, but her hands fumbled with the salt shaker, nearly spilling it for the third time. "Chill, Hazel," she muttered, glancing at the family photo on the shelf. Her mom seemed to wink in encouragement. The doorbell chimed. Max burst in, old backpack swinging, cheering, "Bear lady, does your house smell like cookies?" Hazel laughed, handing him a star-shaped cookie from a stash. Luke followed, gray shirt neater than usual, holding a bottle of Redfield apple cider, a humble gift. He looked at Hazel, smiling. "You look like you just won a baking contest." Hazel blushed, stumbling. "You don't look too growly either." Then Billy appeared from the living room in an old flannel shirt, silver hair mussed. He stood eyeing Luke, and the room seemed to pause. Luke took a breath, stepping forward, voice rough. "Captain Morgan." Billy raised an eyebrow, then opened his arms, pulling Luke into a tight hug. "Good job, kid," he said low. "You're living well." No more words, just a long handshake, as if 15 years melted in the warm room. Dinner was livelier than Hazel expected. Max shared school stories, doodling on a napkin, all four of them, a bear and a big star. Billy played an old vinyl, Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, drifting softly like the table's lamplight. Luke grinned, nodding at the speaker. "Still love this one, huh?" Billy winked. "Reminds me things turn out okay." Hazel watched them, feeling Redfield had restrung a thread she thought was cut. After dinner, Luke wiped cookie crumbs from Max's forehead, while Hazel washed dishes beside Billy. He spoke quietly, voice deep. "You're like your mom, always giving. But Hazel, keep some happiness for yourself." She glanced at Luke through the kitchen door, seeing him laugh with Max, her heart racing. "I know, Dad," she whispered, cheeks warm. As night fell, Luke walked Hazel to the porch, Max dozing on his shoulder. Under Maple Street's lamplight, he paused, voice soft. "You make me remember how to smile, Hazel." "I'm not great at this stuff," Hazel teased, hiding her fluster. "Then you owe me one smile a day, Bennett." Luke laughed, eyes brighter than Redfield's stars. "I'll try," he said, walking off, leaving Hazel standing, hand on her sweater, feeling a new chapter begin. She went inside, finding Billy listening to vinyl, a rare smile on his lips. Hazel thought, maybe Dad's right. Happiness isn't just baking. It's finding someone to share the crumbs with. Outside, Maple Street lay quiet, but Hazel knew Redfield was cooking something truly sweet. A year later, Redfield basked in autumn sun, Maple Street alive with cookie scents and laughter. Hazelnut and Honey hosted its first event, Cookies for Veterans, drawing folks to eat free treats and honor heroes like Billy Morgan. Hazel Morgan stood behind the wooden counter, checkered apron dusted with flour, beaming like sunlight. She wrangled the town, From kids lining up for bear cookies to veterans swapping stories under a white tent, the old radio played James Taylor's "You've Got a Friend," warming the air. Max Bennett, now 8, darted around the yard, wearing a t-shirt proclaiming, "Bear Lady is a superhero," handing out star-shaped cookies. He gave Hazel a stack of drawings, her, Luke, Billy, and a giant bear, scrawled with "Our Cookie Family." Hazel pinned it to the wooden board beside the family photo, eyes sparkling. "This kid," she whispered, "makes me want to open an art gallery." Luke Bennett manned a corner booth where kids shaped bear cookies, an idea he insisted on despite his baking skills being a disaster per Max. In a gray shirt, sleeves rolled, flour smudged his elbows. An old veteran, Joe, clapped his shoulder. "Found your light, kid." Luke smiled, glancing at Hazel, joking with the children. "Sure have, Joe," he said softly. Marion, Redfield's matchmaking grandma, strolled by, cookie in hand, whispering to a friend, "Told you, couple of the year." Hazel overheard, face flaming, nearly dropping a tray. She and Luke never labeled themselves boyfriend-girlfriend, but they were everything to each other, a little family needing no name. Most nights Luke came to the shop, sipped black coffee, watched Hazel bake, and sometimes shared bits about Max or lighter days in his life. Mid-event, Luke tugged Hazel behind the shop, where sunlight filtered through a blazing red maple. He slipped her a heart-shaped cookie, lopsided, slightly charred, clearly his doing. "Don't laugh," he said mock stern. "Took me all morning." Hazel covered her mouth, eyes twinkling. "It's one of a kind," she teased. Luke stepped closer, voice low. "You make my heart better than this cookie, Hazel." She laughed, blushing. "Then keep practicing, Bennett." At dusk, the bakery glowed, Billy sitting with Hazel, Luke, and Max at the wooden table. He nibbled a cookie, a rare smile creasing his face. "Nice work, kid," he said, touching the bake with love sign nearby. Max yawned, leaning into Luke, while Hazel looked at them all, feeling she'd found home, not perfect, but a place where crumbs scattered and everyone shared. As folks left, Redfield quieted. James Taylor's "You've Got a Friend," echoing softly. Hazel stood at the shop's door, gazing at Maple Street, smiling. One cookie had stitched old wounds, but love, of family, community, Luke, and Max, had baked her heart sweeter than any recipe. Thank you for following this heartfelt story on the Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about Hazel, Luke, and their journey in the comments below. And please leave a comment with Army to express gratitude for the brave soldiers in your country who inspire stories like this. If you believe true love can bloom through kindness and heal old wounds, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To stay connected with more touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and join us in spreading messages of love and warmth. Let's cherish the sweet moments of life and love together.